The morning sky over Seoul turned black as the alien ships descended. Captain Hannah Kim gripped the control panel of the orbital defense station as she watched the massive vessels block out the sun. Their dark hulls seemed to swallow light itself, and when the first beams of energy shot down from space, entire city blocks vanished in brilliant flashes. "All units, engage the enemy," Hannah commanded into her communicator, though her voice shook with fear she had never felt before. The alien ships were enormous, each one larger than any human vessel ever built. Their weapons turned buildings too. Dust and melted concrete, like ice under fire, down on Earth's surface. People ran screaming through the streets. The lucky ones died quickly, when the energy beams hit them directly. Others burned slowly, as the alien weapons set everything ablaze. The air itself seemed to catch fire as the atmosphere heated up from the constant bombardment. Admiral Jin Sato commanded the human fleet from his flagship in orbit around Mars. When the distress signals reached him, he immediately ordered all ships to Earth. "This is it," he told his crew. "Everything we trained for." But as his ships approached Earth, he saw the true size of the alien force and felt his heart sink. The aliens had hundreds of ships surrounding Earth. Each one bristled with weapons that humanity had never seen before. When the human fleet opened fire, their missiles and plasma cannons struck the alien shields and simply disappeared, as if they had never existed at all. "Sir, our weapons aren't working," reported Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka from the weapons station. "Their shields are absorbing everything we throw at them." Admiral Sato watched in horror as the alien ships turned their attention to his fleet. The first human destroyer exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. Then, another, and another. Within minutes, half of humanity's greatest warships were nothing but burning metal floating in the void. On the moon, Dr. Jun Park worked frantically in his research laboratory. Through the window, he could see Earth burning like a dying star. The blue and green planet he had known his whole life was now covered in fire and smoke. His hands moved quickly across his computer as he tried to send out his research data before the aliens found him. Come on, he whispered to himself as the transmission uploaded. For 20 years, he had worked on theories about zero energy, ideas that most scientists thought were impossible. Now, with humanity facing extinction, his crazy theories might be their only hope. The laboratory shook as alien ships passed overhead. Dr. Park knew they would find him soon. He had. Maybe minutes before they destroyed the moon base, just like they had destroyed everything else. His fingers flew across the keyboard, sending burst after burst of data to the human ships that were still fighting. Captain Hannah Kim felt her space station rock as alien weapons struck the hull. Emergency lights flashed red as air began leaking from the damaged sections. Through her window, she watched the last human ships make their final stand. They were brave, but it was hopeless. The aliens had technology that seemed to break the laws of physics. "Captain, we're losing power," her engineer reported. "Hull breach on decks 3 and 4. "Keep fighting," Hannah ordered, though she knew it was over. Her weapons had stopped working an hour ago. The aliens had done something to disable them. Some kind of field that made human technology simply stop functioning. Below them, Earth continued to burn. The oceans were boiling away, creating massive clouds of steam that rose up into the atmosphere. The continents themselves were cracking apart under the intense heat. In 18 hours, the aliens had turned humanity's home into a dead rock. The alien commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the last human ships fall silent. To him, this was just another day's work. His species had conquered dozens of worlds, eliminated hundreds of different alien races. Humans were nothing special, just another aggressive species that had tried to expand beyond their home system. "Sir, all resistance has ended," his second-in-command reported. "The planet is completely sterilized." The alien commander nodded. "Good. Begin the resource extraction. This system has useful minerals." He turned away from the window, already thinking, about the next world they would conquer. He had no idea that in the final moments of the battle, one human scientist had managed to send something into space that would change everything. Dr. Park's transmission raced through space at light speed, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of a dying species. Hidden in the data were equations and theories that could unlock the secrets of the universe itself. The few human survivors scattered across the galaxy would receive this message and begin to understand what it meant. The aliens had won this battle, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to learn, to adapt, and to remember. In destroying Earth, they had created something far more dangerous than they could imagine, a species with nothing left to lose, and the knowledge to make their enemies pay. The ultimate price. 6 months after Earth died, Commander Sojin Lee sat in the captain's chair of the generation ship Prometheus, staring at a message that had just arrived from deep space. Around her, 2,000 survivors lived in cramped quarters, eating recycled food and breathing recycled air. They were the lucky ones. Most humans had been on Earth when the aliens came. "Commander, you need to see this," said Communications Officer Minho Choi, his face pale as he handed her the datapad. "It's from Dr. June Park, on Luna. He sent it right before the moon base was destroyed." Sojin read the message slowly. It was filled with complex equations and theories about something called zero-point energy. Most of it made no sense to her, but she understood the important part. Dr. Park believed there was a way to fight back against the aliens, a weapon that could use the very fabric of space itself. "Get me Chief Engineer Yuki Tanaka," Sojin ordered, "and gather all the scientists we have left. We need to understand what this means." Across the galaxy, other human survivors were receiving the same message. On a mining station near the edge of the spiral arm, Captain Hannah Kim commanded 50 miners and engineers. They had been extracting rare metals from asteroids when Earth burned. Now they lived in constant fear that the aliens would find them. "This is impossible," said Dr. Kenji Nakamura, the station's only scientist, as he studied the data. "Zero-point energy exists, but we can't control it. It would take technology we don't have." "Then we make the technology," Hannah replied firmly. "We find a way, or we all die anyway." The work began immediately. In hidden bases scattered across the galaxy, human survivors started experimenting with the theories Dr. Park had sent them. They had very little to work with. Most human technology had been destroyed with Earth. What they had were salvaged parts, broken alien equipment, and desperate determination. Engineer Yuki Tanaka worked 18 hours a day in the Prometheus laboratory. She had torn apart 3 alien fighter ships that had crashed during the battle for Earth. The technology was incredibly advanced, but she slowly began to understand how it worked. "Look at this," she told Commander Sojin, pointing to a glowing crystal inside the alien power core. "This isn't just storing energy. It's pulling it from somewhere else, from empty space itself." "Can we copy it?" Sojin asked. "Maybe, but we need more materials, and more time." Time was something they didn't have much of. The aliens were expanding their territory, taking over more star systems every month. Sometimes human survivors would pick up distress signals from colonies that had been discovered. The messages always ended the same way, with silence. Dr. Kenji Nakamura made the first breakthrough 3 years after Earth's destruction. Working alone in his laboratory on the mining station, he managed to create a small zero-point field that lasted for exactly 3 seconds. The energy release was tiny, but it proved that Dr. Park's theories were correct. "I did it," he whispered to himself, staring at the readings on his instruments. "I actually did it." But the experiment had cost him. The zero-point field had damaged his equipment and filled his laboratory with dangerous radiation. He would need weeks to repair everything and months to understand what had gone wrong. On the generation ship, Prometheus, engineer Yuki Tanaka was having her own problems. She had successfully copied the alien power crystal, but every time she tried to activate it, the device exploded. So far, she had lost 4 laboratory assistants to the experiments. "We're not ready for this," she told Commander Sojin, after the latest accident. "We need to understand the alien technology better before we try to modify it." "Then we learn," Sojin replied. "Whatever it takes." The human survivors developed a network of secret communications, sharing information and resources across the galaxy. They learned to hide their signals from alien detection and to move their bases when discovery seemed likely. They became ghosts, living in the shadows of a galaxy that no longer belonged to them. Dr. Minho Choi, working on a research station hidden inside a nebula, made the next important discovery. He found that zero-point energy could be focused and directed, like a weapon. But the power requirements were enormous. It would take the energy of an entire star to create a field large enough to be useful. "We need to think bigger," he transmitted to the other survivors. "Not just a weapon, but something that can change the entire galaxy." The work continued for years. Human survivors died in experiments, were killed by alien patrols, or simply gave up hope. But others took their place. Children who had never seen Earth grew up learning about zero-point energy and alien technology. They became the next generation of scientists and engineers. The aliens had made one crucial mistake. They thought they had destroyed humanity by burning Earth. But humans had always been survivors. They had lived through ice ages, plagues, and wars. They had learned to adapt, to overcome, to find hope in the darkest times. Now, scattered across the galaxy and driven by grief and anger, they were becoming something new, something the aliens had never faced before. A species that had nothing left to lose and everything to gain from revenge. The work was slow and dangerous, but it continued. In hidden laboratories and secret bases, human survivors unlocked the secrets of the universe itself. They were preparing for a war that would decide the fate of the galaxy. 23 years had passed since Earth burned, and Dr. Minho Choi had grown old, working in his hidden laboratory. The asteroid base was small and cold, carved deep into rock and metal to hide from alien sensors. He had spent decades studying the data Dr. Park had sent, learning from failed experiments and stolen alien technology. On a quiet Tuesday morning, everything changed. "No way," Minho whispered, staring at his computer screen. The numbers were clear, but he read them again and again, unable to believe what he was seeing. After years of small discoveries, he had finally found something that could change everything. The zero-point energy field he had created was different from all the others. Instead of just releasing power, it was affecting the space around it in ways he had never seen before. The field was reaching out, touching other energy sources, and doing something impossible. It was stopping nuclear fusion itself. Minho ran to his laboratory window and looked out at the small artificial sun that powered his base. The fusion reactor that had burned steadily for 20 years was flickering. The zero-point field was somehow interfering with the nuclear processes that kept the reactor running. "If this works on a small reactor," he said to himself, "then maybe it could work on a real star." He spent the next 3 months testing his theory. Each experiment was more dangerous than the last. The zero-point field was unstable and unpredictable. Twice, he nearly destroyed his own base. But slowly, he began to understand what was happening. The field created a cascade effect. It reached out through quantum space and touched other sources of nuclear energy. If he could make the field large, enough and powerful enough, it could reach across entire solar systems. It could touch every star in a galaxy and stop them from burning. Stars would collapse, he recorded in his notes. Not over billions of years, but in hours. Entire civilizations would freeze to death in the darkness. The discovery was both wonderful and terrifying. It was the weapon humanity needed to fight back against the aliens. But it was also the most destructive force anyone had ever imagined. Minho sent his findings to the other human survivors scattered across the galaxy. The response was immediate and intense. Within days, every human leader was debating what to do with this terrible knowledge. Commander Sojin Lee, now 68 years old, and leading the largest group of survivors, called for a meeting. Representatives from every human settlement joined the discussion through encrypted communications. The debate lasted for weeks. "We can't use this weapon," argued Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the generation ship Prometheus. "If we destroy entire galaxies, we become just like them. We become the monsters." "They already made us monsters," replied Captain Hannah Kim from her mining station. "They killed our children, our families, our entire world. Why should we show them mercy when they showed us none?" The arguments grew heated. Some survivors believed that using the weapon would destroy humanity's soul. Others argued that humanity was already dead, that they were just ghosts, seeking revenge for their murdered species. "How many other species have they killed since Earth?" asked engineer Kenji Nakamura during one session. "How many worlds have they turned to ash? If we don't stop them, who will?" The aliens had indeed continued their expansion. Intelligence. Reports from hidden human spy networks showed that 17 more civilizations had been destroyed since Earth's fall. Entire species had been wiped out, their planets turned into resource extraction sites. Commander Sojin listened to all the arguments for days. She was old and tired, carrying the weight of humanity's survival on her shoulders. She had watched friends die in failed experiments, had seen children grow up never knowing the blue skies of Earth, had lived with the constant fear that the aliens would find them. "I've made my decision," she finally announced during the last council meeting. Her voice was weak but determined. "They didn't just kill our bodies when they destroyed Earth. They killed our future. They killed every child who will never be born, every dream that will never be dreamed." She paused, looking at the faces of the other survivors on her screen. "They turned Earth to ash because they could, because we were in their way. They did it without hesitation, without mercy, without even thinking about what we might become. Now, we'll show them what happens when you try to exterminate a species that refuses to die." The vote was close, but Sojin's decision carried the day. Humanity would build the weapon. They would gather their remaining ships and make one final attack on the alien home galaxy. It would be a suicide mission, but it would also be their revenge. The plan was simple in concept, but horrifying in execution. All remaining human forces would converge on the aliens' capital galaxy. They would fight one last battle to draw the alien fleets into a concentrated area. Then, in the moment of their defeat, they would activate the zero-point cascade. The weapon would spread through quantum space, touching every star in the galaxy. The aliens' vast civilization would die in darkness and cold, just as humanity had died in fire and ash. It was a plan born of desperation and hatred, but it was also humanity's final gift to the galaxy. They would make sure that no other species would ever suffer the fate that had befallen Earth. The argument had been going on for 3 days. In hidden bases across the galaxy, human survivors shouted at each other through encrypted video calls. The weapon Dr. Minho Choi had discovered could destroy entire star systems, but using it would make humanity responsible for killing billions of innocent aliens. "We're not murderers," said Dr. Yuki Tanaka, her voice shaking with emotion. "If we use this weapon, we become exactly what they are. We become the destroyers of worlds." Captain Hannah Kim slammed her fist on the table. "They already made us destroyers when they burned Earth. My daughter was on that planet. She was only 8 years old. Why should I care about their children when they didn't care about mine?" Commander Sojin Lee sat quietly in her chair, listening to the debate. She was 70 years old now, her hair white and her hands shaking from age. She had spent half her life running from the aliens, hiding in the darkness between stars. The weight of leading humanity's survivors had aged her beyond her years. The aliens have families too, argued Chief Engineer Kenji Nakamura. They have children, parents, people who love them. If we kill entire galaxies, we're no better than they are. Better? Captain Hannah laughed bitterly. There is no better anymore. There's only survival and revenge. They made sure of that when they turned our home into a ball of fire. The debate had divided the survivors into two groups. The first group, led by Dr. Tanaka, believed that humanity should find another way to fight back. Maybe they could use the weapon to destroy military targets only, or find a way to disable the alien ships without killing everyone. The second group, led by Captain Hannah, wanted total revenge. They had lost everything to the aliens, and saw no reason to show mercy. In their minds, the aliens had started a war of extinction, and humanity should finish it. Listen to me, said Dr. Minho Choi, speaking from his hidden laboratory. I created this weapon, and I understand what it will do. Once we activate it, there's no stopping it. Every star in their galaxy will die. Every planet will freeze. Every living thing will be dead within days. Good, said Captain Hannah. Let them freeze like we've been freezing for 23 years. Let them know what it feels like to watch their world die. Commander Sojin had heard enough. She stood up slowly, her old bones aching. Around the galaxy, human survivors fell silent as she prepared to speak. They all knew that her vote would decide humanity's fate. I've been thinking about my grandson, she said quietly. He was born on the generation ship Prometheus 10 years ago. He's never seen Earth, never breathed real air, or felt real sunlight. He asks me about home, and I have to tell him that home doesn't exist anymore. She paused, looking at the faces on her screen. The aliens didn't just kill our bodies when they destroyed Earth. They killed our future. They killed every child who will never be born, every dream that will never be dreamed. They killed the possibility of humanity ever having a real home again. Dr. Tanaka tried to interrupt, but Sojin raised her hand. I'm not finished. For 23 years, I've watched our people die. Some died in experiments, trying to build weapons to fight back. Others died of despair, unable to live with what we've lost. All of them died because the aliens decided we didn't deserve to exist. But Commander, said Dr. Tanaka, if we use this weapon, we're choosing to become killers. We're choosing to destroy innocent lives. Innocent. Sojin's voice grew stronger. Were they innocent when they watched our cities burn? Were they innocent when they turned our oceans into steam? Were they innocent when they decided that humanity was nothing more than pests to be exterminated? The room fell silent. Sojin walked to the window of her command center and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the aliens were continuing their expansion, destroying more worlds, killing more species. They've killed 17 other civilizations since Earth, she continued. 17 entire species, gone forever. And they're not stopping. They're spreading across the galaxy like a disease, killing everything in their path. She turned back to face the camera. I've made my decision. We're going to build this weapon. We're going to gather every ship we have left, and we're going to make one final attack on their home galaxy. Commander, please, begged Dr. Tanaka. Think about what you're doing. I've thought about nothing else for 23 years, Sojin replied. They turned Earth to ash because they could, because we were in their way. They did it without hesitation, without mercy, without even thinking about what we might become. She stood straighter, her voice growing firm. Now we'll show them what happens when you try to exterminate a species that refuses to die. The vote was taken immediately. 47 human settlements voted to build the weapon. 32 voted against it. Commander Sojin's deciding vote made it official. Humanity would have its revenge, even if it meant destroying themselves in the process. They would gather their remaining ships and make one last stand in the aliens' home galaxy. It would be a suicide mission, but it would also ensure that the aliens paid the ultimate price for what they had done to Earth. The decision was made. There was no going back. The final battle began on a cold morning in the Andromeda Tertius system. Commander Sojin Lee stood on the bridge of the human flagship Retribution, watching as hundreds of alien ships surrounded the small human fleet. After 23 years of hiding, humanity had finally come out of the shadows for one last fight. All ships. This is Commander Lee. She spoke into her communicator. Today we end this war. Today we make them pay for what they did to Earth. The human fleet was tiny compared to the alien armada. Only 47 ships remained from all of humanity's scattered survivors. Each ship carried desperate people who had lost everything. People who had nothing left to live for except revenge. Admiral Krathfeld commanded the alien fleet from his massive dreadnought. He had been hunting the human survivors for years, following reports of their hidden bases and secret experiments. Now, finally, he had found them all in one place. Pathetic, he said to his officers as he watched the small human fleet. They think they can fight us with these few ships. We will crush them like insects. The battle started with the humans attacking first. Their ships were old and damaged, built from salvaged parts and desperate engineering. But they fought with a fury that surprised the aliens. Every human ship fought until it was completely destroyed, never surrendering, never retreating. Dr. Minho Choi worked frantically in the weapon chamber deep inside the Retribution. The zero-point device was enormous, filling an entire deck of the ship. It hummed with dangerous energy, barely contained by the makeshift shielding he had built around it. "How much more time do you need?" asked Engineer Yuki Tanaka, her face covered in sweat and blood from the battle damage. 10 minutes, Minho replied, his hands moving quickly over the controls. "Maybe 15. The weapon needs to absorb more energy before it can activate." Above them, the ship shook as alien weapons tore through the hull. Emergency lights flashed red as sections of the Retribution were destroyed one by one. The bridge reported that they had lost engines, weapons, and life support. They were dying, but they needed to hold on just a little longer. On the second day of battle, the human fleet was down to 12 ships. Captain Hannah Kim's mining vessel, Defiant, had been destroyed in a suicide attack against an alien cruiser. The generation ship Prometheus was burning in space, its hull split open like a broken egg. "Commander, we can't hold them much longer," reported the weapons officer. "We've lost 70% of our fleet." "Keep fighting," Sojin ordered. "We just need more time." The aliens were enjoying the battle. To them, it was like watching insects struggle against a boot. They took their time, destroying human ships slowly, savoring their victory. They had no idea that every minute they delayed was bringing their own destruction closer. On the third day, only the Retribution remained. The flagship was a wreck, its hull torn open in dozens of places. Half the crew was dead, and the other half was dying from radiation poisoning and explosive decompression. "The weapon is ready," Minho announced over the ship's communication system. "I need to activate it manually. Once I do, we have maybe 30 seconds before the ship is completely destroyed." Commander Sojin nodded. She was bleeding from a head wound, and her left arm was broken. Around her, the bridge crew prepared to die. They had all known this would be a suicide mission, but they had come anyway. "All human ships, this is Commander Lee," she broadcast on all frequencies. "It has been an honor serving with you. Remember Earth, remember our families, remember why we fight." Dr. Minho activated the weapon. The zero-point field expanded instantly, reaching out through space faster than light itself. It touched the fusion reactors of the dying human ships, drawing power from their destruction. It fed on the quantum signatures of the dying humans, growing stronger with each death. The activation was invisible and silent. Across the galaxy, on millions of alien worlds, people looked up at their suns and saw nothing different. The stars continued to shine, The planets continued to orbit, and life continued as it always had, for exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. Then, simultaneously across 12 galaxies, every star began to collapse. The nuclear fusion that had burned for billions of years simply stopped. The zero-point cascade reached through quantum space, touching every source of stellar energy and turning it off like a light switch. On the alien homeworld, Emperor Zeldak was in his palace when the sky began to change. The sun that had warmed his world for millennia started to shrink. Within hours, it became a white dwarf star, tiny and cold. "What is happening?" he demanded of his scientists. But they had no answers. Across the empire, every star was dying at the same time. The temperature on billions of worlds began to drop. Oceans froze solid within days. Atmospheres turned to snow and fell to the ground. The vast alien civilization that had conquered so many worlds found themselves trapped on planets that were becoming balls of ice as the last human survivors died in the cold vacuum of space. Commander Sojin's final transmission echoed across the darkening galaxies. "We were never the aggressive species. We were just the one you should have left alone." The galaxies went dark. The age of the aliens was over. And in the silence between the stars, humanity had its revenge.